Giants fans, welcome back to a new season of NFL New York Giants football. Welcome back to another episode of Only a Giant. I am your host, Michael Doherty, and we're back. We're here looking at the 2025-2026 season, hoping for obviously a much better result than what we saw last year. And we'll jump right in. I guess we'll start off with me personally. Nothing really big has changed here. Obviously, football's back, so we're going to bring the podcast back. Offseason was a blast. I do like a lot of the moves that the Giants made, bringing back Paulson Adebo, obviously getting Abdul Carter. Jackson Dart wasn't probably my number one pick, I would say, as far as the quarterback position is concerned. But I didn't really feel like there was a great option out there unless you were getting Cam Ward, which also, in my opinion, had his own flaws. Matt Stafford, obviously, if that happened, that would have been fun. But also, that's kind of a one-year rental, which I guess is kind of what Russ is anyway. But I am very happy with what we have right now with the quarterback room between Russell Wilson, between Jackson Dart, between Jameis Winston. I think we'll let Russ start the year and then kind of move on from there, let him go next year, and Dart will, hopefully be the starter, and Jameis Winston will be his backup. Someone I don't want to trade. I think if they were going to trade Jameis Winston, I think they would have done that already, so they could have kept Tommy on the roster. Just my opinion there, but who knows? Other than that, preseason went well for the Giants. Obviously, we saw that, and we're really kind of moving on right away into week one against the Washington Commanders. Away game for the Giants on the road, which might be a good thing for the Giants just to, kind of start off with, hopefully a win, but just not starting off with a potential crowd going crazy for the Giants and turning quickly if things don't go the right way, I guess is more of what I'm thinking. So I think a good road game here, not too far away against a competitive team, but a team that I think we can beat. And we'll get into that a little bit later, I believe. What else? Injury report news here. Obviously, the injury reports have not officially been released yet, but what we have seen reported from Dan Duggan and Ryan Dunleavy as well, it does look like Andrew Thomas is practicing. What capacity he's practicing, I'm not sure. And it does look like Theo Johnson is practicing as well, which Theo was kind of they were being pretty vague about him. I wasn't really sure what was going on, if there was an injury or something else was going on. And we'll see what the designation is too. I wouldn't be shocked to see him limited on that official injury report when it does pop up. I believe a little bit later today, maybe after practice. But it did sound like everyone was practicing that could practice. So good signs there with Andrew Thomas specifically and with Theo Johnson. Andrew Thomas, I still wouldn't rush it if for some reason he isn't quite healthy or comfortable enough yet. Obviously, it sounds like there were some additional injuries that we didn't really know about at the time with that, maybe not additional injury, but the screw that had to be removed, the knee rescoped. Sounds like everything's moving in the right direction. It just slowed everything down a little bit. So maybe that's more the right thing to say here. The injury took just a little bit longer to heal and get to where he is comfortable. And I do like the fact that it doesn't seem like they're rushing him. So if he's ready, obviously, yes, we need him. But could we survive this week without him? I think we could. Could we survive next week without him as well? Micah Parsons list, I think we'd have a better chance now of surviving without him there. What else we got, guys? I did write down some notes here of things I do kind of want to go over. The injury report was a big one. Washington, the upgrades kind of they made, and maybe we'll look at that as far as like the depth chart is concerned. Obviously, a lot of it, I feel like they didn't make any drastic changes. Obviously, Deebo Samuel is going to be a good get for them. The running back room is still pretty much the same with Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez, but they did add the Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who currently is listed as a fourth running back on the depth chart. It doesn't mean he won't get some carries. I think they're going to try to run the ball quite a bit against us, if I had to guess. Other things, you have your tight ends, Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and John Bates, who was re-signed. It does look like they have Lawrence Cage on the roster, which I did not know, which is kind of interesting. Offensive line right now, Laramie Tunsil, Brandon Coleman, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, who might not play, I think, if I heard that correctly. And then, of course, Andrew Wiley at right tackle, unless Josh Connolly starts, which is certainly possible as well. Your wide receivers, like I mentioned already, we know Terry's back. He's practicing now. He might be a little rusty to start, but we'll see what happens there. Then Debo and Noah Brown. And then they do really like Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey as well. So we'll see what happens there. As far as the Giants are concerned, and let's jump back over to the Giants side of things here. Obviously, some changes. We'll look at, I guess, let's look at the unofficial if they still have that out depth chart. Here it is right here. So your big things, obviously, you're going to have Russ as your one, Jackson Dart as your two, and then Jameis as your three. Kind of a tough situation there. I wonder who is going to be active on game day. Obviously, you would assume Jackson Dart will be active being QB2, but I kind of think it might be Jameis, and then Jackson Dart may be that emergency quarterback for at least week one. We'll see what happens. Tight ends, obviously, you got Theo, who's back at practice today, which is a good sign. Daniel Ballinger, Manhurts, and then obviously Thomas Fidone. And of course, your wide receivers, we all know Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Wandell Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Gunner, and Bo Collins. We'll talk about Jalen real quick. I don't really know what to expect with him. Is he really going to have a big impact on the Giants this year in this game specifically? I kind of feel like no. I think he's going to be active. You might have a target or two, that really just seems to be those deep targets. So they may try to stress the defense a little bit and see if they can get the defense, beat the defense over the top with that famous moon ball. Silly thing to call it. I feel like it's a deep pass. I don't know why we have to call it a moon ball specifically. Other quarterbacks throw deep passes, but maybe it's more specific to specifically what he does. I don't know. Other than that, your offensive line, Andrew Thomas, John Runyon Jr., John Michael Schmitz, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor. It does look like Marcus Bowe is going to back up the right tackle spot, Evan Neal the right guard spot, Stenny the left guard, and then James Hudson the left tackle with Schlotman as the backup center. That's offense for the Giants. Defense we kind of already know as well, but we'll go over it quickly. You got Dex in the middle with DJ Davidson backing him up. Rakeem Nunez Roches as the other DT with Roy Robertson Harris probably rotating in. Darius Alexander, I kind of wonder if he'll be active on game day. I'm kind of thinking that he won't be. I think they like what they see out of DJ Davidson so far. Let Darius Alexander continue to work himself back into the rotation. Your defensive lineman, your edge guys here, Kayvon Thibodeau, backed up by Chauncey Golston. Then, of course, you'll have Brian Burns and Abdul Carter. I wonder if they work Abdul Carter in kind of slow. I want to see him be on every snap. I just don't think that's going to happen this year, or this week, I should say. If I had to guess, he's going to be in on maybe 60 to 70% of the defensive snaps. Definitely being on the pass, rushing downs, trying to sack the quarterback, maybe playing a little quarterback spy as well with Jaden Daniels. And he's probably the only guy that you can really do that with, unless you're bringing in a safety or Drew Phillips or something like that, who blitzed quite a few times last year and had a couple stops on Jaden Daniels last year, if I remember correctly, kind of in one of the first weeks of the year, or maybe the first game, I should say, the Kicker Bowl, where we didn't have a kicker available. And then obviously your middles, you're going to have Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden, and then Darius Musa backing him up. Your secondary, Paulson Adebo, Cordell Flott, Deontay Banks. My guess, Cordell Flott is going to be your cornerback 2. And I think Deontay Banks will still rotate in, but you don't really like what you've seen so far. I don't, at least, of Deontay Banks. Kind of a big year for him if he struggles and just seems uninterested. Even in a preseason rep, he kind of gave up on a tackle attempt where I felt like he could have very easily made a tackle, or at least tried to make a tackle, and he didn't. Some concern there. Definitely some concern, I think, with what you hope for out of Deontay Banks, and maybe he's not going to be long for this team. I guess we'll find out on that. Obviously, Paulson Adebo, like I mentioned, and then your safeties are Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland. I do wonder, or I'd like to see, I wish this would happen, and probably something that won't happen based off of our contracts or salary cap at this point, but man, it would be nice to bring Jabril Peppers back, let him be the safety 3. He's better than Bo Braid and better than Dane Belton, somebody that would be really interesting back in Giants blue. Seems like he wasn't really happy with the separation with the Patriots. Definitely something I would consider bringing in. And then what do you guys think about OBJ, our wide receiver room right now, I'm not super comfortable with, and part of that might be my thoughts on Wandell Robinson. I just don't know if he really is someone that's going to be in the long term plans for the Giants at this point. There's such a small wingspan. You can't really run a lot of different routes with him that are being extended past the 10, 10 yards or so. Yeah, he can make some catches and he will be good, but he has no length to him. It's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex out there trying to catch a ball. He's going to catch what's thrown directly to him, but you get outside of his numbers a little bit, and it's going to be tough for him. I'd be really curious to bring OBJ in and just see what happens. Maybe it's a feel good story. Maybe it kind of rectifies that situation. Obviously, it was kind of an ugly divorce with the Giants. He felt like the Giants traded him away to a bad team, kind of out of spite. And would anybody put that past uh, Dave Gettleman? I wouldn't. Wouldn't shock me at all if that was something that Gettleman did, and would be really curious to see OBJ back in a Giants uniform. Maybe he doesn't get 13. Maybe Hyatt gives that up. I don't really like 13 on Hyatt anyway. I liked him better when he was, what was he, 86? 86 maybe. That sounds right. I don't know if it is right, but no, he wasn't 86. That was Darius Slayton, I don't know, 87, 88, 89, whatever he was. I like the number that he was prior to the switch to 13. I think that looked better on him anyway. Give OBJ back to number 13. But realistically, that's a pipe dream, probably something that is not going to happen. And I understand that. What else, guys? Obviously, we have some more to talk about here. Looking at my quick notes here. So, overall, between the Giants and Washington, I do feel like the Giants have made some significant upgrades to the point where I think we're going to compete in this game, and we certainly have a chance to win this game. The Commanders, they're coming off obviously a great year. You can't take anything away from them with that. I do think it was a little bit of kind of everything going right. They had that Hail Mary game. I think it was against the Bears where they won on the last play of the game. They had the first Giants game where we couldn't field a kicker, and if we had a kicker, we probably win that game. A lot of things went right for them last year. Does that even out this year? Look at the Giants in 2022, and I don't want to say that that's what the Commanders were last year, but could it be an interesting parallel between the two? Giants in 2022, kind of everything went right. We managed the offense fairly well with Daniel Jones. Not a lot of turnovers. Somewhat of a limited offense, but enough to get the wins. But also a lot of things went right. That Baltimore game, we had the fumble from Lamar Jackson. Kayvon, I think, recovered. What else? Tennessee Titans. We went for two right at the end of the game and won that. Kind of manufactured that win. We were down like 14-0 in that Tennessee game, week one at one point. So just a lot of things that kind of went right in 2022 for the Giants, and is that a parallel for the Commanders this year? And do they come back down to earth a little bit? I think they do. Now, I don't think that's to the level of what the Giants did in 2023. Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback. I think they're going to be much, much better than what the Giants were in 2023. We always compete with the Commanders, though, and I think, or Redskins, and we'll compete with them this year. And I think at the very least we split against the Commanders this year. And I certainly think week one is kind of the time to do that. It's a new offense with Russell Wilson. It's back to Dable's offense, but Kafka's calling the plays. There was a lot of open looks last year. We all remember it. A lot of open looks that Daniel Jones missed, or Tommy DeVito missed, or whoever at this point missed. That I think Russell Wilson will be able to hit. The quick game will work. The run game will help. And quite honestly, I think the defense will be better, and the defense won't have to be on the field for 75 plays or 80 plays, whatever it was last year, where it felt like a lot of times the offense just over and over and over again we're getting 3-and-outs or turnovers, and the defense was just on the field so much. This year, I think we'll have a little bit more of a consistent offense. I'm not trying to sit here and say we're going to have a top 15 offense or anything like that, but maybe we could be a top 20 offense, manage the game a little bit better, have a run game, have someone at the line of scrimmage that kind of can check out of plays and notice blitzes and get the ball out quickly if we need to, because that's what Russell Wilson's going to do. He might check down, might be a little bit frustrating at times, but I think he'll get us in and out of plays that'll work. He'll take some deep shots, not a lot over the middle, but he'll be a little bit more of a game manager until Jackson Dart comes in. That'll be another conversation. I guess we'll talk about that next. I think the Giants can be certainly more competitive in this game and potentially win it. But once again, we'll come back to the prediction here at the end. What do we want to talk about next? I guess let's talk about that. Let's talk about Jackson Dart. And, when do we think Jackson Dart is going to be the starter? He's listed as QB2 right now. And, whether that's, I think that might be more Dable just wanting him to have that backup experience and kind of treat everything as QB2, even if he is technically inactive week 1. I think he just wants to have that experience, wants to have him right next to his hip and digesting, learning, doing everything he can. So when is a good time for Jackson Dart to come in and be the starter? And let's kind of pull up the schedule here. And it's kind of not an easy... There's not a spot where you say, oh, this is that spot. Obviously, this is that spot. Obviously, everyone always looks at the bye week. It's week 14. Not really a spot where you're like, yeah, that's too late if you're gonna eventually switch to Jackson Dart. And obviously, a lot of that depends. How are we doing? How are the Giants doing? What's their record? Are they, 3-10? Are they 5-8? Or what are they? Where are they? Kind of in this season, are they competitive in a lot of these games, or are they just getting blown out and it just looks bad? Because if that's the case, if they're getting blown out, I do think that the switch will happen much earlier, which maybe goes without saying, I guess, in general. But obviously, you start off with the Commanders week 1. We go to Dallas week 2. That's not going to happen. I'll be at that game, by the way, in Dallas with some friends. Chiefs, I believe that might be a Sunday night game. Week 3, that's a home opener. And then the Chargers and the Saints. Like, the Saints might be a good spot if the Giants are, for some reason, 1-4 or something like that at that point. But then you have the Eagles the week after. Then the Broncos, some tough defenses. And then the Eagles again after that. Like, it's not really a good point early in the season where you could really say, hey, this makes the most sense. One spot I kind of thought might make sense is the Commanders, the second game. What week is that here? Bad podcasting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, that is coming off the bye, actually. So week 15, I believe it is. Well, that's so late though. I guess we can't do that. That's just too late. All right, I'm gonna scrap that. I was originally gonna say that second game against the Commanders, but that's just so late in the season. Maybe the game against the Bears, which is 13, 12, 11, 10, week 10. If we're at week 10 and it's 3-7 or 2-8 or something like that, that might be a good spot against the Bears defense. You have the Bears and you have the Packers and you have the Lions. That's that stretch of NFC teams that'll, all be tough. So maybe there really isn't a good time there either. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It'll happen when it happens. But obviously you kind of hope that the Giants are competitive. And, maybe they do go into their bye week at, 7-6 or, maybe 5-7 or, somewhere around that 6-8. I don't know. You kind of hope that the Giants are competitive at that point and have a chance to, steal some wins. It is a tough schedule and I agree with that. But at the same time, you got to play the opponent that's in front of you. You never know what's going to happen week to week. Even look at like the Kansas City Chiefs. A couple years ago, we played them and we almost beat them with Daniel Jones. Now, yeah, they were having a little bit of an off year offensively at that point. But I do think that they certainly have a chance to have a better year than what people think. I'm not in on this, 4-13 or 5-12 type of season. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of this, though, I guess I'll end that kind of conversation side of it here. I do think that the decision on Dart is really going to depend on the record. If the Giants are winning, I think they're going to try to hold on to that as long as they can and not put Dart on the field until next year. I think ultimately that is still the goal. If they're losing and they need a spark, which isn't the right way to do it, but if they're losing and they need a spark, I could see them at some point making the switch to Jackson Dart before the bye week. I think the bye week is just too late. I think they have to do it before that. Maybe it's the week prior to the bye week or something of that nature. I'd love to see, I think, the Saints, for some reason, if we're 1-3 or whatever going into week 5, that might be a good spot to kind of just get the ball rolling. If we're doing good at that point, then of course you don't do that. But that's what I got on Jackson Dart. I am excited to see Jackson Dart. I do think that he has shown a lot, honestly. I guess we'll talk about that preseason a little bit, performance for him. Just someone that, I don't look at stats in preseason. You look at what you see on the field, the product on the field, and yes, he is going through probably fairly basic reads, a fairly basic offense against a fairly vanilla defense. But what I wanted to see was being comfortable in the pocket. What I wanted to see was the ability to go through those reads and have an accurate pass. There was very few passes I felt like that I saw, even the incompletions, that were inaccurate. There were a couple, don't get me wrong. I think he'd be the first to admit that as well. But he was poised in the pocket. He moved around in the pocket really well. The pocket manipulation, I think, was top notch in the preseason. If he felt the pressure, he was sidestepping. He was kind of moving with the pocket to give himself some time to make those throws, and he was stepping up. Some things that we just haven't seen, in the last, 6 years or however long it's been with Daniel Jones. And I hate to pile on a dead horse. I know other people don't even like to say his name at this point, but these are things that we're seeing in one preseason game that we haven't seen from Daniel Jones in 6 years. And yes, I know Daniel Jones had a pretty good preseason when he was a rookie. He had a pretty good season in general as a rookie, other than the fumbles. That was obviously the big issue with him coming out as a rookie. People always are so quick to say, oh, Daniel Jones had a good preseason, so Jackson Dart, that doesn't mean anything. And there's some validity to that. But you got to remember, too, that Daniel Jones actually had a pretty good rookie year. Other than the fumbles, that was a big thing with him. Everyone's like, oh, you got to clean up the fumbles, But other than that, he had a pretty good rookie year. And I guess let's, maybe once again, bad podcasting here. Maybe I should have that up and ready. But let's look at Daniel Jones' rookie year, stat-wise. And I think the numbers kind of back that up. Let's go Daniel Jones stats. 2019 rookie year, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a QB rating of 87.7. He only had 1 year higher than that, and that was 2022 when he was 92.5. But he threw 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and obviously the fumbles were an issue that year. I didn't even know if I want to bring that up with how many fumbles he had his rookie year. But if you remember, he had a pretty good first year with the Giants as a rookie. People were pretty excited for everything that they had seen out of him other than the fumbles. And I guess I'll pull that up right now, the fumbles. Just trying to find that real quick. I had it up for a second and then I lost it again here. He did run for 279 yards as a rookie. Boy, why is it? Oh, there it is. 19 fumbles. 19 fumbles as a rookie, his rookie season. And there were some pretty bad ones, I do remember. But you look at the passing numbers at that rookie year here, completed. He had 3,600 yards with that. He completed 284 passes out of 459, over 60% with that. He had, what was it, I believe? Yeah, 61.9%. Sorry, he had 3,027 yards. What am I looking at? And he had 24 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So interceptions was a little high for the 12 games that he played, but obviously the fumbles were the big issues. What I think happened with Daniel Jones is we ruined him, which, I think that's more of like a Jason Garrett thing. I think Jason Garrett and Joe Judge really kind of just sucked. Quite honestly, maybe not Joe Judge, but Jason Garrett specifically, I think tried to, mold him into that old school offense that just doesn't work in the NFL anymore. He was there for 2 years with him and throwing a bad offensive line, a kind of a tough running game, and just everything that could have went wrong with Daniel Jones went wrong. Could he have a good year this year? Maybe. I still see the same thing with the Colts that I saw with the Giants. Flat balls, not being able to put any touch on the balls, quick reads, throwing the ball even if the person's covered. And the issues that you don't see in preseason are, post-snap. And that was always Daniel Jones' biggest bugaboo here. Post-snap adjustments, he couldn't do. It was just always an issue with him. Not throwing with anticipation, some decent weapons with the Colts, but I just don't anticipate a good year for him. But what I was getting to is I do think we kind of ruined Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones did have a good preseason, but that doesn't take away Jackson Dart's preseason, I guess is really kind of what I'm getting at. I think Jackson Dart did a lot of good things in preseason. He answered a lot of questions and actually outperformed those expectations for preseason as well. So that's where I'm at with Jackson Dart. Great pocket manipulation, getting through his reads quickly, making the throws quickly, and accuracy. Accurate throws. And you just love to see it. You like to see good quarterback play. We've been starved for that for years. I think that's why the Giants have been so excited, or Giants fans, with having Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson here, because I think we'll see some actual competent quarterback play. We'll actually have some established drives. We'll be able to get some deep balls off, Russ's moon ball once again, and we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a good year for the Giants. Well, a good year in relation to what the Giants have had recently. So that's what we'll jump to next. I think we'll talk about my score prediction for this game. Now, I know I didn't really preview a lot with the Washington Commanders. We don't really know much about the Commanders this year, though. I don't really want to get too heavy in the numbers with just a brand new defense and probably a similar offense, but still different weapons. But the defense is very different, vastly different from what it was the year before, I believe, at least. We didn't actually talk about that, really, did we? About the defensive side of the ball. Dietrich Wise, Deron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Jarzon Newton still there, Dorrance Armstrong, a couple of those Dallas guys. You saw Bobby Wagner. You saw Frankie Louvu, Von Miller. They're going to be starting a rookie cornerback with Trey Amos. I don't really know how he's looked so far in training camp, or preseason, but we'll see what happens there. Then obviously you still have Mike Sanistrell as your nickel, Will Harris as a safety, and Quan Martin as a safety. Just a very different, at least I believe, a very different Washington Commanders defense. We'll see what happens. My score prediction for the Washington Commanders New York Giants game is going to be a Giants win. I believe it's going to be 31-24. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a one-score game. I do think the Giants offense is going to show some light. I think the defense is going to get after Jaden Daniels. Hopefully we can stop the run. Hopefully we can stop him from running. I think maybe we force a fumble with him while he's just trying to scramble, and that's a big play in the game here. Fumble recovered by the Giants off of a sack. I think Abdul Carter gets a sack, but I don't think it's going to be as... I think it's going to be more about containing Jaden Daniels with Abdul Carter. I think he'll be in a lot of like QB spies, which you don't like, but you like the versatility. I think he's the only one on the defense that can do that, unless you're bringing Tyler Nubin down to do that. So I'm thinking Giants 31, Washington Commanders 24. Giants start the season 1-0, go into Dallas. We'll see what happens tomorrow night against the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles game. And then my overall record prediction. I'm a little bullish on this for my overall record prediction. I'm going to give a floor and a ceiling. My ceiling is 9 wins, so a 9-8 season, and my floor is 6-11. That's going to be my floor. Now that sweet spot in between, probably 8-9, somewhere like that. I think that's certainly feasible. But once again, a lot of this is going to depend on how quickly we make a change to Jackson Dart, and that's dependent on how we're doing, how we're if we're winning games or not. It's kind of a weird thing here, but my ceiling, I think the absolute best the Giants can be this year, barring anything crazy, is 9-8, and I think the absolute worst, I do think, is that 6-11 number. I wouldn't be thrilled with that, but that's doubling the wins from last year. I mean, you kind of gotta take the good with the bad on that. So I think 9-8 is the floor ceiling, and 6-11 is the floor, and I think 8-9 is that sweet spot. I think we can be competitive this year. Probably not going to make the playoffs unless everything goes right, and that 9-8 just happens to get us squeaking in. And that 9-8 by as well, that's like if everything goes right. Literally everything goes right, kind of like that 2022 season. Russ has a resurgence and looks like a former MVP, maybe just a little bit older. And that's where I'm going with that. So Giants win week 1. I did predict that last year as well, and obviously last year did not go well, especially that week 1 game. But I do think we're a much better team this year. I think we're just overall, I think we are a better team than what we were last year, defensively and offensively. I think the quarterback play is going to be extremely different. Last little thing I want to do before I get out of here, guys, I want to do a little just NFL like pool pick. So I picked 6 games, and I'm doing this actually kind of with 2 buddies. I'm doing this with my buddy Kyle and my buddy Eddie. So I'm going to do the picks for the week that we came up with against the spread. These are going to be games that I believe that will cover the spreads one way or the other. So let's get into that. My first one is Dallas against Philadelphia. I am picking Philadelphia to cover the spread -7. I think that Philly's too good. I mean, if there's a year that they're going to repeat, this is going to be that year that they're able to do that. Philly's too good. It's going to be a tough year, I think, for NFC East people or just teams playing Philadelphia in general. And I think Dallas, obviously, they're at this kind of like precipice or tipping point where they either need to have a great year this year or it's just going to be ugly, ugly, ugly quick. Like I could see Dallas truthfully being in last place in this division this year, just with the trade, with the trade of Micah Parsons, with the team's reaction to the trade, with a new coach and I think it's Brian Schottenheimer who knows what's going to happen. We don't know if that's going to be a good thing, if that's going to be a bad thing. First time head coach, he's been passed over multiple times earlier in his career, and has kind of been a lifelong coordinator since. So what's Dallas going to look like? I think they might be the biggest question mark in the division. So I am picking Philly -7. The next one I'm going to do is Cincinnati versus Cleveland. I'm picking Cincinnati -5.5. I think Cincinnati's offense is too good here against the Cleveland Browns. Who really knows what's going to happen with Joe Flacco? Excuse me. And I think Cincinnati can cover that spread just out of like pure weapons. Joe Burrow obviously is a great quarterback. They have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They have a good running game with Chase Brown. They have some other weapons in Yosevas. They're going to be a good enough team. I think they might not be an amazing team, but I think they'll be enough, certainly in this week 1 game, to cover the spread against the Cleveland Browns. Next, so that's 2. I have the next one is Miami Dolphins against the Indianapolis Colts. Colts are favored by -1.5. I think that's pretty much the home advantage, if you will. I do have Miami covering that game, +1.5. Probably a little bit to do with my Daniel Jones, not hate, but like just no faith in Daniel Jones. Yes, the Miami Dolphins secondary is a little bit banged up and unproven, I guess, if you will, at this point. But they do have a good offense. If Tua is healthy, that offense is going to put up points. They have A-Chain, they have Jalen Waddle, they have Tyreek Hill. They'll score points. And I think that's going to be the Colts' problem. Obviously, we've seen it with Daniel Jones for plenty of years. They're not going to be able to move the ball. I think that's a pretty safe bet for Miami to cover that spread. Next, I do have the Giants. Giants, Washington. Washington's favored by -6 here. I think the Giants can cover that, and they're going to win this game. And if they win the game, they'll cover anyway. So, I'm not going to rehash that one too much. Next, I have Tennessee against Denver. And Tennessee with a rookie quarterback, unsure weapons. You have Calvin Ridley, and you have some other guys. You have Tony Pollard. Denver's defense is legit. If Bo Nix can build off of his rookie year and be as good as he was last year, throwing the ball, being a complete quarterback in Sean Payton's system, they're going to be a tough team. Denver, I do have covering this -7.5. Last one here, folks. I have the Houston Texans against the Los Angeles Rams. Look, the Texans defense is going to be pretty good. The Texans offense is a very big question mark. They don't know who they're starting on the offensive line. Maybe they do now, but the offensive line has been an issue for them, and they're trying to fix that, and they're mismatching, they're trading their starter. Like, it's just a weird situation there. I think CJ Stroud is a great quarterback. I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. So I have the Rams covering that spread, -2.5. That's my 6. So I'll go over it once more. Rams -2.5. Denver -7.5, Giants +6, and the Dolphins +1.5, and Cincinnati Bengals -6.5, and the Eagles -7. That's all I got, guys. Thanks so much for sticking around with me and hopefully watching to the end here. If you could, please like and subscribe. Obviously, we'll always appreciate that. Happy to be back here doing this again. Obviously, off season, we didn't really do too much here. Kind of a downtime, busy time. you know, you get your diehards, I think, that listen during the season, and I'm that as well. But obviously, this is a much smaller podcast. This is, just me, and sometimes it's a little tricky running just a solo operation here. But thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Only a Giant. Once again, I am your host, Michael Doherty. Let's go Big Blue. Let's get a win on Sunday at 1 o'clock on Fox. Let's go.